was supposed to be just a weekend of adventure among friends. 4 days in the mountains of Vermont, disconnected from the world. Just us in the wild. But in that forest, we found something that changed our lives forever. My name is Michael Reed. I'm 32 now, but this story happened 5 years ago, back when I still believed the world was ruled by laws that made sense. Before I knew there are places where those laws simply don't apply. Autumn in New England had always been my favorite season. The golden leaves, the crisp air, that feeling that something magical is about to happen. It was Jason's idea to plan the trip. That was just like him, always the adventurer of the group, always pushing us out of our comfort zones. There were 4 of us: Jason, the natural leader; Sarah, an amateur photographer with a knack for the macabre; Kevin, my best friend since high school; and me, the skeptic, always needing proof before I could believe in anything. The trail was remote, one of the lesser-known paths in the Green Mountains. Jason promised it would be a genuine experience. No tourists, no cell signal, just us and the stars, he said with that confident smile. How could we have known those would be the last stars some of us would ever see? Night fell faster than expected that first day. The sky darkened in a matter of minutes, like someone had switched off the sun. The wind shifted, bringing a bone-deep cold, far more intense than anything October was supposed to bring. Our phones had no signal, just as Jason had promised, but there was something unnerving about the way our technology seemed to just die. Fully charged batteries from that morning now showed 0%. We should set up camp, Kevin suggested, adjusting the straps of his heavy backpack. But we were disoriented, the trail less visible as the darkness thickened. That's when Sarah saw it, a faint glint of light between the trees. There. It looks like a structure. We were miles from any known civilization according to our maps. But there it was, a wooden cabin in the middle of nowhere, like a miracle in the increasingly hostile forest. Must be a hiker's shelter, Jason theorized, already walking toward it. Lucky us. At the time we thought we were lucky. A shelter, a refuge, a miracle when we needed it most. But as we got closer, I noticed something strange. The cabin didn't look abandoned, but it didn't look lived in either. It felt like it existed in some kind of limbo, waiting. And then I saw the chains. Thick, rusted iron chains sealed the front door, held in place by a massive padlock that looked over 100 years old. Who locks up a cabin this deep in the woods so intensely? And why were the chains on the outside, as if someone had tried to keep something in, not out? Sarah shone her flashlight toward the ground. Look, fresh footprints in the mud. There were indeed fresh marks around the cabin. Someone, or something, had been there not long ago. Kevin knocked on the door, calling out. No response, just the distant echo of his voice fading into the still forest. That's when I saw the journal. Nailed to the door with a rusted knife, a tattered leather notebook swayed slightly in the breeze. Its pages were torn, except for one, which bore a hastily written message in red ink. Do not open. Do not unleash. Common sense told us to leave. To pitch our tent elsewhere. To pretend we'd never seen the place. But the cold was biting and dark clouds promised rain. And Jason was already inspecting the chains, a determined gleam in his eyes. We need shelter, he insisted. Whoever wrote that was probably just some lunatic. I should have argued harder. I should have dragged everyone away. But I didn't. Instead, I helped Jason pry the padlock open with a steel bar from his pack. The metal gave way with a snap that echoed through the forest like a gunshot. The door creaked open, revealing total darkness inside. We thought we'd been lucky. A shelter from the coming storm. But when we forced open that locked door, luck turned into a curse. And something ancient, waiting in the shadows, finally found its way back into our world. I can't explain what I felt when that door opened. It was as if the air suddenly became heavier, charged with something beyond the chill of the night. Sarah was the first to step inside, her flashlight slicing through the darkness in trembling beams. The cabin's interior was larger than it looked from the outside. A main room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen, and 2 bedrooms in the back. "Cozy place," Kevin commented, trying to ease the tension we all felt, but no one laughed. The cabin seemed recently inhabited. There was a stack of firewood by the fireplace, canned food in the kitchen cupboard, and a half-full thermos on the rustic wooden table. But something was deeply wrong. The walls were covered with strange symbols drawn in charcoal and other substances I'd rather not identify. Hanging from thin strings on the ceiling, dozens of handmade dolls swayed gently, despite there being no breeze at all. Each one had its eyes crudely sewn shut with black thread. "What the hell is this?" Sarah whispered, pointing to a shelf lined with dozens of old photographs. In each one, the faces of ordinary people, families, couples, groups of friends, had been violently scratched out with black ink. Except for one photo in the center. 4 young hikers, smiling with backpacks on, their faces untouched, in a forest that looked eerily familiar. Jason swallowed hard. "We can look for anything useful and leave at sunrise." That's when we heard the first click, a mechanical sound from a dark corner of the room. We aimed our flashlights and found an old cassette recorder sitting on a chair. It was on, the tape turning slowly. Was this on when we came in?" Kevin asked, his voice shaking. No one answered because we all knew the answer. The recorder began to play on its own. A woman's voice, broken by static, filled the silence. "Day 17. I can't trust Tom anymore. His eyes have changed. It's not him looking at me. We've been here 6 days. Or maybe 7. Time doesn't work right here." We found the Ranger's journal. 1974. It explains the cycle. What was released. How to seal it again. But we need to. The recording cut off abruptly. Sarah's eyes met mine, a silent question hanging between us. "It must be some kind of prank," I said without conviction. "Maybe someone's indie horror project." Jason had opened a drawer and was holding a bundle of VHS tapes. "There's a TV and VCR in the bedroom. Maybe we should." "No," I interrupted. "I don't think we should watch anything we find here." But Jason's curiosity was stronger than his common sense. Within minutes, we were all gathered around an old television in the main bedroom. The tape began to play, filling the room with that familiar analog hiss. The video showed the same cabin we were in, filmed by someone holding a shaky camera. A man's voice narrated, "Day 2 at Holloway Cabin. Diane's had a fever ever since we found that symbol on the tree. Doug still hasn't returned from the East Trail. I'm starting to think we should." The person filming turned the camera toward a window, and for an instant, something moved outside. A tall, thin silhouette with limbs far too long to be human. Kevin shut off the TV. "Enough. This isn't funny." "We can find out who made this," Sarah said, already in investigation mode. "The tapes, the photos, they're dated. Maybe we can figure out what happened to these people." I was about to suggest we leave at first light when I noticed something strange about my wristwatch. The hands were spinning wildly, completing hours and seconds. Kevin's digital watch flashed random numbers. And Jason's compass, he always carried it, spun continuously as if north were everywhere and nowhere all at once. "We need to get out," I whispered. "Now." But when we tried to open the door, it was locked. Not from the outside, but by some internal mechanism we couldn't identify. The windows, too, seemed sealed, though no visible locks were present. "This is impossible," Jason pounded on the door. "How is this happening?" Sarah pulled her journal from her backpack. "I'm going to document everything. If something happens to us, at least there'll be a record." That night was the longest of my life. None of us slept. The cabin felt alive around us. Subtle noises in the walls, like something moving inside them. Shadows stretching in impossible ways. And every so often, a whisper barely audible, as if someone was trying to speak through an invisible veil. By morning, If it was morning, since the light through the window slits felt wrong, sickly yellow, Jason was no longer the same. I found him sitting in the kitchen, drawing the same strange symbols we had seen on the walls, murmuring to himself. "We have to help," he said without looking at me. "We need to complete the cycle." Sarah and Kevin had changed too. Sarah spent hours staring at a stain on the wall, as if she could see something I couldn't. Kevin had stopped speaking altogether. It was on our third day in the cabin that we found the entrance to the basement. Hidden beneath a rug in the smallest bedroom, it was a wooden hatch carved with the same bizarre symbols. Jason insisted we had to open it. Sarah agreed, her eyes now burning with a feverish glow. Only Kevin and I hesitated. "Can't you see what's happening?" I argued. "This cabin, whatever it is affecting our minds. We need to get out, not go deeper." But Jason and Sarah's curiosity had become something almost violent. The hatch was opened. A rank odor like damp earth and metal rose from the depths. Wooden stairs led into darkness. "I'm going down," Jason announced, already stepping onto the first rung. "I'm not staying up here alone," Kevin said for the first time in hours, his voice hoarse. "Either we all go or no one does." We descended single file, our flashlights illuminating the steep staircase. The basement was much larger than it should have been given the cabin's size. The packed earth walls were covered in the same symbols, more intricate now and far more numerous. In the center of the space, a perfect circle had been dug into the ground, filled with a dark liquid that reflected our lights like black glass. "It's a map," Sarah said, pointing. "Look closer." We leaned over the circle. The liquid wasn't water or oil. It was thicker, almost viscous. And Sarah was right. Inside we could see what appeared to be a moving map of the surrounding forest. But the geography was all wrong. Mountains where there shouldn't be mountains, rivers that didn't exist on our maps. And in the center of the liquid map, the cabin, pulsing with a faint red glow. "This cabin isn't in our world," Jason said, his voice oddly calm. "Not entirely." In one corner of the basement, we found wooden boxes filled with journals, dozens of them, from different people over the decades. The oldest dated back to 1887, written by the man who built the cabin, Thomas Holloway. The most recent was just 3 years old. All told variations of the same story, groups who found the cabin, who unleashed something, and who were slowly consumed by it. The last journal, written by a forest ranger named Robert Miller in 1974, had the clearest explanation. The entity isn't evil as we thought. It's just hungry. It exists between worlds and feeds on human essence. Memories, personalities, souls, if you will. Holloway brought it here by accident when he built this place on an old crossing point. The chains keep the portal half closed. But when they're removed, the portal opens completely. The entity then chooses a host from those present. The others can escape, but only if someone is left behind. That's how the cycle works. That's how it's always worked. I looked at my friends with growing horror. Jason was smiling in a way I'd never seen before. Sarah was taking compulsive photos of the circle on the floor. Kevin was trembling, whispering to himself. "We have to leave," I insisted, grabbing Kevin's arm. "Now." We rushed up the stairs back to the main room. To our surprise, the front door was now unlocked, slightly open, letting in gray light. Outside, the forest looked the same, but also irrevocably different. The trees were in the same places, but their shapes seemed off, like something remembered from a dream. "We can go now," Kevin said, hope in his voice. "We can just leave and go home." Jason stood in the center of the room, watching us with pity in his eyes. "It's not that simple. Someone has to stay. Someone has to close the cycle. Haven't you figured it out yet?" His eyes, they weren't his anymore. Something ancient stared through them now. Something that knew things we were never meant to know. "I'll stay," he said in a voice that was, and wasn't, his. "Now go." Run. Before I changed my mind. Sarah hesitated, her camera still pointed at Jason. Are you sure? Jason's smile was calm, almost peaceful. I am. Now go. Kevin was already at the door, tugging my arm urgently. I looked at my friend one last time. For a moment, I saw the real Jason in there, fighting to say something, but then the expression changed back to that unnatural serenity. Sarah, Kevin, and I ran into the woods like demons were chasing us. We didn't stop until we were breathless, lungs burning in the cold air. When we finally turned around, the cabin was gone even though we hadn't run that far. We have to go back, Sarah said, panting. We have to help Jason. That's not Jason anymore, I replied with a certainty that chilled me. We walked all day trying to find the original trail, but nothing looked familiar. Our maps didn't match the landscape around us. Jason's compass, now in Kevin's hand, still spun wildly. It was late afternoon when we realized we were walking in circles. No matter which direction we took, we always ended up in the same place. A small clearing with a large stone in the center, etched with the same symbols we saw in the cabin. We're trapped, Kevin whispered, collapsing onto the stone. We're not getting out. Sarah no longer responded when we spoke to her. Sitting at the base of a tree, she wrote furiously in her journal, pages and pages of identical symbols to those on the walls. When I tried to take the journal from her, she looked at me with eyes that were no longer hers. Don't you see? She asked, her voice sounding distant. He's always been here. Inside us. Inside all of us. That night, Sarah vanished. She simply wasn't there when we woke up. Her journal remained, filled with grotesque drawings and one repeated phrase. The cycle must continue. The cycle must continue. Kevin and I kept trying to find a way out. Days passed, or maybe only hours, because time worked differently in that place. The sun rose and set at erratic intervals. Sometimes the sky went dark for minutes, sometimes for days. It was during one of those long nights that Kevin started to change. At first, it was small things. The way he tilted his head when he spoke, how his eyes seemed to focus on something I couldn't see. Then he started talking about Jason and Sarah, about how they were in a better place now. They understood, Michael, he said with a strange smile. They accepted the invitation. Why do you keep resisting? The next morning, I woke up alone. Kevin was gone, leaving behind only a single piece of paper with a symbol drawn on it, the same symbol we'd seen over and over in the cabin. I was alone for, I don't know how long. I tried to stay sane, talking to myself, replaying memories from before this place. But the solitude was crushing, and the forest grew more hostile. Branches moved to block my path, shadows rose when the sun went down, and voices whispered my name in the dark. Just when I was ready to give up, I found it again. The cabin. As if it had materialized from thin air, there it was, exactly as we had left it. The door was wide open, inviting. I entered cautiously. Everything looked the same except for one thing. The photos on the shelf now showed Jason, Sarah, and Kevin, their faces clear and vivid. And there was a new photo in the center. Me standing alone in the woods, staring at the cabin. On the center table, a letter. I recognized Sarah's handwriting instantly. Michael, if you're reading this, then everyone else has made their choice. Only you remain. The entity needs 4 to complete the cycle. 3 to feed it. 1 to contain it. That's the balance. That's the price. Jason chose first. I understood later. Kevin was the last. Now it's your turn to decide. Will you be the guardian or the sacrifice? If you choose to leave, another group will eventually find this place. The cycle will go on, with or without you. But if you stay, if you become the guardian, you can stop others from sharing our fate. The choice is yours. But remember, you never truly leave this place. Never. Next to the letter, the lock's key and the iron chains were neatly arranged. I sat for hours thinking. I could feel the entity around me, patient, waiting. Finally, I took the key and stepped outside the cabin. Outside, I wrapped the chains back around the door, locking it tight. I used a knife to nail my own journal to the door, leaving a clear warning for whoever might find this place next. Do not open. Do not unleash. Then I began to walk. And this time, the forest let me go. I returned to civilization 3 weeks after entering that forest. To the outside world, I had been missing for nearly a month. Search teams had combed the area but found no trace of me or my friends. When I showed up at the police station in the small town of Bridgewater, everyone was stunned. I was thin, dehydrated, but alive. I told them about an accident, about how we got separated during a storm, about how I got lost. I didn't mention the cabin. I didn't mention the entity. I didn't mention the choices my friends made. The searches for Jason, Sarah, and Kevin went on for months. Eventually, they were declared dead, presumed victims of exposure or an accident in the woods. Their families held funerals with empty caskets. I attended all of them, carrying a secret no one would believe. I tried to return to a normal life. I got a job, started dating, made new friends, but I could never forget what happened in that forest. And more importantly, I could never ignore what I brought back with me, because something came back with me from that place. Not the entity itself, but a connection to it. In the first few months, it was small things, vivid dreams about the cabin, moments when I swore I saw Jason or Sarah in a crowd, objects that shifted slightly when I wasn't looking. Then the incidents became more pronounced. My computer would turn on by itself at night, displaying impossible symbols. Recordings would appear on my phone, conversations I never had, voices I recognized as my lost friends. And the mirrors began to show something behind me, a tall, slender silhouette that vanished whenever I turned around. I searched for information on the Holloway cabin. There were no official records of it, but I found scattered mentions in obscure paranormal forums. Stories of other survivors spread across decades. Always the same pattern. Groups entering the woods, the cabin appearing from nowhere, people disappearing, one person returning, changed. Some of these survivors tried to go back, bringing weapons, gasoline, explosives. They planned to destroy the cabin once and for all. None of them ever found it again. The forest protects it. The entity hides it. 2 years ago, I started receiving letters. No return address, no postage. Just envelopes that appeared in my mailbox. Inside them, pages from Sarah's journal, photos of Jason smiling inside the cabin, notes written by Kevin. Messages saying they were waiting for me, that they missed me, that I had broken the cycle and now I needed to fix it. The last letter arrived last week. Inside, only a rusted key I instantly recognized, the cabin's padlock key, and a map, hand-drawn in Sarah's handwriting, showing a specific path through the forest. Last night, I dreamed of all of them. They were in the cabin, sitting around the table. One empty seat was waiting for me. They looked peaceful, their eyes different, but not in a frightening way. Jason smiled and said, "It's time to complete the cycle, Michael. It's time to come home." I woke up to my phone ringing. A text message from an unknown number. "We're waiting. We can't continue without you. I know what I have to do now. I know I'll never be free until I return to that cabin. Until I face what I left behind. Until I complete the cycle. I'm writing this as a record, a warning. If you ever find an isolated cabin in the forest with chains on the door and a journal nailed to it, don't go in. No matter how cold it is or how dark or how badly you need shelter. Turn around and run. Because some doors are locked for a reason. And now, I am the reason no one else will ever be able to lock them again." End of recording found on Michael Reed's cell phone, recovered by the search team in the Green Mountains, Vermont. Michael Reed is still missing. Authorities continue their investigation, but there has been no sign of him or the other 3 missing individuals. The coordinates mentioned in his notes were searched. No structure or cabin was found at the location.